So, point 12, once again, new attitude towards life. Toward life, not towards, toward. Personal love for God rearranges priorities in your life, and occupation with Christ begins. God begins to become more important, and He's the number one person in your life. Anything else is secondary. And regardless of those secondary things being so important as even your own father, your own mother, your own son, your own daughter, your own cousin, your childhood, kindergarten friends, once they start getting in the way of your personal love for God, of your dedication to the daily cognition of the Word of God, you start putting them to the side. Because God is first. God did not come to unite all humanity. Who told you that? Who told you that God was about internationalism? We are the world, we are the people, we are the children. Ridiculous. God has come to divide people. He's a God of division. Not in the church. We divide ourselves inside of the church through our own mental attitudes. Sinful mental attitudes. But He is a divider of people. That's why Christ said, I did not come to unite father and son, mother and daughter. I came to divide them. And why is that? Positive versus negative volition. Your positive volition versus your own father's negative volition. That will cause a great chasm between both of you. And that's when you're going to have to make a decision whether your family is more important or God. Point 13, the believer is qualified for providential preventative suffering. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Ooh, mijito, now you're ready for some suffering. Providential preventative suffering is the first stage of suffering in spiritual adulthood. This suffering, a lot of people do not pass. They arrive at gate 5, and the suffering that they experience, they cannot handle it. Mainly because of arrogance. They cannot stand being helpless. They cannot stand feeling humiliated. It's not humiliating, it's just that our arrogance is so great still at that moment. Well, it's removed, but it's still great that we just throw in the towel when we retrogress. But those who do pass providential preventative suffering, they make their way to gate 6, spiritual autonomy, and it's a wonderful life. The freedom is wonderful, the happiness is wonderful. The pressure is great as well. But the oxymoron here is that you're suffering, yet you're so happy. Satan is like, how is it that he can be suffering and still have this happiness? Well, that's the power of Bible doctrine in your soul. The power, the doctrine that Satan himself rejected. He threw the towel. He did not want this. He threw it away in its perfect state. And you know how when you become a loser, you throw in the towel or whatever, you do not want to see other people win because you threw in the towel, you were the quitter? Well, Satan does not want you to continue advancing because he's the quitter. He doesn't want inferior creation, us humans in inferior bodies, to be advancing more than he. He had all the opportunity in the world, but he refused it, he rejected it. Together with 1/3 of the fallen angels. 1/3 of the angels, which makes up the fallen angels. And point 14, Christ is formed in you. Galatians 4:19, this is occupation with Christ. Galatians chapter 4, verse 19. So Christ is formed in you through all that doctrine. Don't confuse it with the Shekinah glory. Don't confuse it with Christ indwelling your body. I'm talking about Christ inside of your soul through all that doctrine that you have. And when you form Christ inside of you, it inevitably and incidentally becomes a problem-solving device known as occupation with Christ. And Paul says, he uses the children and mother analogy. Paul is the mother here, as the apostle, as their pastor. He says, my dear children, students, but yes, children, for whom I am in labor. This is analogous to him teaching and suffering with them, and seeing them fall, and seeing them become distracted, getting into legalism, and he's still persistent, going after them, teaching them Bible doctrine. He is in labor until Christos, until the time which Christos is formed in y'all, in you, inside of you. When Christ is forming you at gate 5, that is when you are born. So there's different levels of birth. I'm not going to get into them, but yes, born again at salvation, born from above, regeneration. And then you continue being born as you're inside the divine power sphere. When you get out, you die. When you get back in, you're born once again. Getting out into the cosmic system is tantamount to operational death, as per James chapter 1. But when you get back in the divine power sphere, you're born from God. Then you continue advancing until you arrive at gate 5, where you are born, the status of Christ being formed in you, occupation with Christ. Okay. Where are we now? Nope. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 10. I think we're going to stay here for the rest of the lesson. I really want to get this down, because thereafter, we're not going to see this. Just remember, the field is your situation, it's your pressure, it's the evil thrown at you. That's your field. You are the sower. What is the seed? The doctrine that you've learned. From gate 1 to gate 4, you've bought doctrine. You've bought seed. Now you have seed to sow it. But you decide how much doctrine to apply to your pressure situation. Right now, you're probably listening to this doctrine and there are distractions. The distractions are probably getting you angry, etc. So you decide how much doctrine to apply. You apply doctrine, and therefore you sow the seed. I mentioned last time that there are also other metaphors here, such as the drama metaphor, the epikoregos, the rich affluent man who funds the chorus at his own expense. There's also the insemination analogy or metaphor, that is the fact that God gets you pregnant, so he inseminates you. He puts the sperm, not sporum, but sperma. This opens up the metaphor. He gets you, the sower, pregnant. He inseminates you and gets you pregnant. And in the same way, he's going to you become the epikoregos. He's going to give you seed to get your pressure situation pregnant. Your pressure situation is your whore, just as we were the whore as unbelievers. And God took us out of the streets. He brought us into his house, fed us. He showered us, cleaned us up, and put on a cute dress on us, which is analogous to salvation. And thereafter, he continued protecting us and feeding us in phase 2. And that's analogous to logistical grace in phase 2. Then he kept loving us and making love to us. And that is analogous to Bible doctrine. The whore or the ex-whore's desire to be loved and to respond to his aggressive love is tantamount or is analogous to our own volition, because if she doesn't want to, well, she's not going to be loved. She can leave. If she doesn't abide by his or comply to his terms, by his terms, then she can easily leave. This harvest of righteousness is found in several parts, several places. It's found in Hosea chapter 10, verse 11. The context here of Hosea is that Israel was divided into the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south because of revolution. The kingdom of the north was very apostate, very reversionist. The south as well, it was reversionist, but not as bad as the north. Eventually the north would be destroyed in 721 BC. Then the south would be destroyed in 586 BC. So the south lasted a little bit longer. So here God is talking to the north, also known as Ephraim, which is another name for the kingdom of the north, the tribe of Ephraim. What does it say? Ephraim is a trained heifer. Ephraim is a trained heifer that loves to thresh. Now, threshing is an easy job for the heifer. Threshing involves the heifer carrying a threshing sledge that does not weigh that much, and that threshing sledge would separate the grain from the chaff. And that's pretty easy. Other more difficult jobs would be such as plowing. So Ephraim is a trained heifer that loves to thresh. That is prosperity. Ephraim has been enjoying the prosperity that God has given them, even though they are reversionists. And then it says, in verse 10, that loves to thresh. Ephraim, verse 11, pardon me. But, what does it say? But I myself will pass over her fair neck. Fair neck is prosperity. I will pass over her fair neck and ride her. Harness her, yes, harness her and ride her. This is tantamount to God giving him discipline, the fifth cycle of discipline. And ride her. What is Ephraim going to do now? Ephraim will plow. Now, plowing is much more difficult than threshing. Plowing is the breaking up of the land, the ground, in order to sow that seed. Plowing involves very heavy equipment, and you have to dig about 6 to 12 inches down there. This is analogous to them having to break up the soil of their heart. Their heart is too hardened, and they're not responding to the love, the doctrine from God. So this is a call for positive volition with discipline. The discipline has to do with plowing. The response has to do with the soil. So Ephraim will plow. Judah, the south, will harrow. Harrow is a lighter job than plowing. First you plow, you break the land about 6 to 12 inches deep, and then you pass again, harrowing which is for the purpose of removing any remaining clods, any remaining weeds, and that's only about 4 to 6 inches. So first you plow, which is very difficult, and then you harrow. So Judah is not that bad. They're going to survive more than 100 more years. So that's why it says Judah will harrow. That's another call for positive volition. They're not as bad as Ephraim. That's why it's harrowing, and Ephraim is plowing. Judah will harrow to him, Jacob. Jacob is the name for Israel, but in disobedience. Jacob before he arrived at super grace. And then, what does it say in verse 12? Verse 12, I'm just going to put it down here. So, righteousness for yourselves. So righteousness for yourself. What does it say here? Reap to yourselves unfailing love. This is a call for them to recover and start learning positive volition. It says, break up. So break up your unplowed ground. In other words, there are two negative, and he's calling them to start having positive volition. And because we see here, and for it is time to seek the Lord, positive volition, analogous, which is the plowing, the breaking up of the unplowed ground. Until the time which I come, Yavo. So he comes, rather, and rains. Well, not necessarily throw. He throws, he scatters tzedek, righteousness upon you. So God is the one who's going to come and sow the righteousness. So this is a call for positive volition. The kingdom of Ephraim, who's negative. Now, before this video finishes, Hosea is the book where the prophet Hosea, was called to marry a prostitute, a whore, and he was to love her for the purpose of teaching doctrine. What is that? The doctrine of God, loving disobedient Ephraim, the whore Ephraim. But Ephraim keeps on running away, going with other men. Yet he keeps going after her and loving her. Let me continue that in the next video.